In fact, I want us to consider the quintessential law statement of God. We call them the Ten Commandments, right? Anybody heard of the Ten Commandments before? You may not know what they are, but you go, yeah, I've heard of the Ten Commandments. Well, what I want to do is I just want to take the Ten Commandments, or at least I want to take a few of them, and I want to paraphrase them for you, and then I just want you to evaluate them as we state them in modern language. Okay? Here's God's law. Hey everybody, I want you to take at least one day a week off. And I want you to use it to cultivate your spirituality and your appreciation for this world and life and others. And while you're at it, don't go around killing each other, but just live and let others live. And you know, could you just respect your parents? Because after all, they may not be perfect, but they brought you into this world, and when you were helpless, they took care of you. So could you just try to respect them and get along with them? Oh, and while you're at it, what do you say we just all tell each other the truth? And rather than deceiving each other, let's just be honest about what we really want and about what we really think. And you know, maybe it would be a really good idea if we didn't destroy other people's families by sleeping with people we're not married to. Because that just leads to so much chaos and destruction and disintegration. It's just probably not a really good idea. And you know, what do you say that we just stop trying to keep up with the Joneses? And don't worry about having to have the same kind of house your neighbor has. Don't worry about having the same kind of possessions or bank account that your neighbor has, but just be content with the stuff you've got. Now let me ask you a question. Does any of that sound unfair? Does it sound restrictive and ugly? Or would we look at those things and go, you know, if everybody did that, this world would be a better place, wouldn't it? If everybody did that, you know, took at least a day off and cultivated a little spirituality and really tuned into the right kind of values, and we respected other people's stuff, and we didn't destroy homes by being sexually reckless, and we were just honest, and we didn't worry about keeping up with the neighbor. Wouldn't the world be a better place if we all lived that way? See, turns out that the law of God is actually beautiful. And as it turns out, the law of God is actually the minimum requirements for behaving humanly. If we're not abiding by the law of God, we're acting in a subhuman way. We're acting like animals. We're acting like barbarians. We're living less than the kind of life God intended for human beings to live. And what we thought was the ceiling turned out to be the floor. The law of God is saying, here's what you at least have to do in order to live a truly human life, a beautiful life, a rich life. Now, when we're confronted with these realities about God's law, there's a couple of pretty normal things to have happen inside of us. The first one is we feel condemned. We feel condemned. Because if the law of God is just the minimum standard for behaving humanly, and we can't even seem, you know, here we are, we can't even seem to measure up to the minimum standard, man, then we begin to feel guilty. And we begin to feel condemned. We can't even meet the minimum standards for living a truly human life. That's an awful feeling, not to meet the minimum standards. I remember when I was in graduate school, and I can refer to graduate school as the time when I first discovered my mind. that there was actually, joy in thinking and reasoning and learning and expanding horizons and deepening what you knew. And as I really began to cultivate the life of the mind and interact with others, I had a few people, say things like, man, you're really smart. And I'd never had anybody call me smart before. It felt kind of good. And I began to I wonder how smart I really am. I mean, I just kind of putzed around in high school and didn't really care. And I just kind of got through undergrad by cramming. But now that I'm actually interested in learning, man, I love the mind. Maybe I'm a closet genius. You never know. And I heard there was this organization for geniuses. It's called Mensa. And the only requirement for getting into Mensa is you had to be in the top 2% of IQ of all the people in the world. And I'm going, I just wonder. I just wonder. And then I heard that Mensa also had kind of a second level club where it wasn't for those that were actually geniuses, but for those that were really, really gifted. You could kind of be, like a junior member of Mensa. And I thought, well, I bet I can at least qualify for that. So one day, I took an IQ test. It was an abbreviated one, but I took an IQ test. And I sent the information in, and I got my score back. And I knew the ranges. Like 85 to 115, that's average. All the poor people in the average category. And then like 115 to 125, that's above average. And 125 to 135, that's gifted. And 35 to 45, that's highly gifted. And when you hit that 145 mark, genius. 145 to 165, genius. Only 1 in every 40,000 people get into that category. And if you score between like 165 and 200, you're in the highest genius category. Like 1 in 4 million people hit that category. So I sent it in. Whew! Even a junior member of Mensa would be cool. And I came back, and I'm trying not to be proud, but I want to declare everybody here, I am average. I wasn't even gifted. I was just average. And I thought, let me take that test again. And there was something kind of humbling about looking at it and going, yeah, your IQ, dude, you're like right in the middle, way to go. You and most of the world. And I realized I couldn't even meet the minimum requirements to be a junior member of the intellectuals in the world. It just felt kind of ugly. And it felt bad. Man, I thought I was better than that. Well, here God comes. And he says, when it comes to morality, when it comes to acting really humanly, my law sets the minimum requirements for what it's like to live a morally appropriate, truly human life. And every one of us fall short. Dude, we can't even meet the minimum requirements. It's kind of makes us feel guilty, kind of condemning. But something else is meant to happen with this. I want you to look at what the scripture says in Galatians chapter 3 and verse 24. It says, the law was our tutor to bring us to Christ, that we might be justified